The city was quiet that night. Cold wind moved through the empty alleys, pushing torn papers and dust across the ground. Streetlights flickered weakly, throwing long, trembling shadows on the walls. It was the kind of night when most people stayed inside, safe and warm. But Ethan had nowhere to go. He walked with slow, tired steps, his coat thin and torn at the edges. Every breath he took turned into a small white cloud in the air. His hands were red from the cold. Hunger had become his oldest companion. He had not eaten properly for 2 days. Still, his eyes searched the dark corners for something, anything that might keep him alive for another night. Under an old bridge, Ethan found his usual spot. A pile of boxes, a broken chair, and a blanket that smelled of smoke and rain. It wasn't much, but it was his home. He sat down, pulling the blanket tight around him. Far away, he could hear the hum of traffic, the sound of people living lives that felt far from his world. He closed his eyes, hoping to rest, but a strange sound reached his ears. It wasn't a normal city sound. It was soft, metallic, and broken like a machine crying. Ethan frowned and lifted his head. The sound came again, a faint pulse echoing from the alley behind the bridge. He hesitated. He had learned long ago that curiosity in dark places could be dangerous. But something about that sound felt different. It wasn't anger. It was pain. Slowly, he stood and followed the noise. His boots crunched against frozen gravel. The deeper he went, the darker it became. Then he saw it, a faint blue glow lying near the wall. It flickered weakly like a dying candle. As he stepped closer, Ethan stopped breathing for a moment. On the ground lay a figure, not human. Its skin was pale silver, almost metallic, and faint lines of light ran across its body like moving veins. It was breathing fast, each breath shaky and shallow. One of its arms was twisted, and a dark liquid, glowing faintly blue, dripped onto the concrete. Behind it, half buried under trash and metal, was something that looked like a small broken pod, as if a machine had fallen from the sky. Ethan froze. His mind told him to run. This wasn't real. Maybe he was dreaming, or maybe hunger had finally made him lose his mind. But then the creature opened its eyes. They were bright and full of fear. It tried to lift its head, but its strength failed. A weak voice escaped its lips, soft, broken English. "Please, help." Ethan took a step back. He looked around, half expecting someone to jump out. No one came. The streets were silent again. Only the alien's breathing filled the air. Something in that sound hit him deep inside. He had been ignored all his life. He had begged for help on these same streets and watched people walk away. Now he saw the same helplessness in another being's eyes. He looked at the creature again. It was shivering, though its skin seemed to glow with heat. Its hands twitched as if trying to reach for him. Ethan swallowed hard. "I can't just leave you here," he muttered under his breath. He bent down and touched the alien's arm. It was warm, too warm, and pulsed faintly under his fingers. Carefully, he tried to lift it, but it was heavier than it looked. Using all his strength, he dragged the creature toward his small shelter under the bridge. Every few steps, he stopped to catch his breath. The alien groaned softly, its voice full of pain, but it did not resist. When they reached his spot, Ethan laid it on his blanket. He took a deep breath and looked around helplessly. He had no medicine, no tools, nothing. All he could do was clean the wounds with water from a plastic bottle. The blue blood shimmered as it mixed with water, giving off a faint glow that lit the dark corner. It looked almost beautiful. For a moment, Ethan forgot the cold. He tore pieces from his coat and wrapped them around the injuries. The alien's breathing slowed. Its body glowed faintly brighter, and the lines on its skin pulsed like soft light underwater. Ethan sat beside it, unsure what he had just done. He looked toward the sky through the gaps in the bridge. Somewhere above those clouds this thing had come from. Somewhere far beyond his world. "What are you?" he whispered, not expecting an answer. The alien's lips moved again, weak but clear. "Kale," it said before falling silent. Ethan blinked. The name echoed in his mind, Kale. It had a sound of both strength and sadness. He didn't know why, but he felt a strange sense of connection. Maybe it was because both of them were lost. Both of them had no home tonight. He stayed awake for hours, watching over the creature as it slept. The night grew colder, and the wind howled through the empty bridge. Still, Ethan didn't move. He wrapped what was left of his blanket around both of them. In the distance, faint sirens started to echo. Police, or maybe something else. Ethan looked toward the direction where he had found Kale. The broken pod was still there, hidden in the dark. For the first time, fear touched him. Whatever had brought this being to Earth might come looking for it. And Ethan, a man forgotten by his own kind, had just stepped into a story that would change everything. Morning came slowly, its pale light seeping through the cracks beneath the bridge. The air was colder than before, and a thin mist crawled over the ground. Ethan woke with a shiver. For a moment he thought last night had been a dream, but then he turned and saw the faint blue glow beside him. Cale was still there. The alien's chest rose and fell in slow, weak breaths. His skin no longer flickered so brightly, but the light patterns beneath it still pulsed like soft waves. Ethan rubbed his hands together, unsure what to do next. He had helped humans before, people on the streets like him. But this was something far beyond his world. He stood up and looked toward the alley where he had found Kyle. The broken pod was still there, hidden beneath piles of trash. The thought of it made his stomach twist. If someone found it, they would ask questions. Questions Ethan couldn't answer. For the first time in years, fear and purpose fought inside him. Run away and forget or stay and help. He looked at Cale again. The alien's hand twitched, reaching for something unseen. Ethan sighed quietly. "I guess I'm not going anywhere," he whispered. He spent the next hour scavenging what he could. From an old gas station dumpster, he pulled out an empty water bottle, half a loaf of bread, and a thin plastic tarp. It wasn't much, but it was all he could offer. When he returned, Cale's eyes were open, dim but alert. "You helped?" Cale said softly. His voice sounded like a mix of wind and echo. "Why?" Ethan froze. It had spoken again. He didn't know what to say. He sat down slowly beside him. "Because you needed it," he replied simply. "Nobody should die alone. Not even someone from wherever you came from." Cale blinked, studying his face. "Earthman." "Kind," Ethan laughed once, a short sound. "Not all of us." "Trust me," Cale's gaze softened. "Still, you help. Dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Ethan asked. Cale's fingers brushed the dirt weakly, drawing strange symbols. "Hunters. They follow." "Must not find me," Ethan frowned. "Hunters? You mean other aliens?" Cale nodded slowly. "They want what I have." His voice trailed off as he pointed toward the direction of the alley where the wrecked pod lay. Then he closed his eyes again, too weak to continue. Ethan looked at the alley, then back at Cale. He realized that if the alien was being hunted, then he was already part of the danger. His heart thumped faster. Maybe there were already people or things looking for him. He imagined black vans, strange suits, maybe worse. Still, he couldn't leave him now. The memory of Cale whispering please still echoed in his ears. Ethan had been ignored by the world for too long to ignore another voice asking for help. As evening returned, Ethan tried to make the place safer. He moved broken boxes and pieces of metal around the shelter to hide Cale from view. He even dragged a heavy old carpet from the trash pile and placed it near the edge of the bridge to block the light from escaping. He had just finished when a distant hum filled the air. A sound like spinning engines, faint but growing louder. Ethan froze, looking up through the cracks of the bridge. A shadow passed above, a shape he couldn't recognize, moving too smoothly for any airplane. His chest tightened. Maybe it was them, the hunters Cale had warned about. He turned back and shook Cale gently. "Hey, we need to move." "Something's out there." Cale opened his eyes with effort. His skin brightened slightly, as if reacting to the sound. Too soon. "They found me." "Who?" Ethan asked, panic rising. Cale tried to sit up but fell back with a groan. "Hide, pod." "Hide you?" Ethan didn't understand everything, but he grabbed what he could. He ran toward the alley, heart racing, and covered the small wrecked pod with trash bags and metal sheets. The hum grew louder, passing right above him. Then just as suddenly it faded away. Silence returned. He stood there for a moment, breathing hard. Then he ran back to Cale. "It's gone," he said. "Whatever that was, it's gone." Kyle looked relieved but exhausted. "You risk your life," he said quietly. "Why?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He just sat down, staring at his worn hands. "Because I know what it's like when nobody helps." Kyle's eyes flickered with light, soft and grateful. "You are rare," he said before drifting back into sleep. Ethan leaned back against the cold wall, his mind spinning. He had no plan, no safety, and no idea what kind of storm he had just stepped into. Yet for the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt before: meaning. As the night deepened, he looked out toward the city lights and whispered, "Whatever you are, Kale, I'll keep you safe." But far away above the clouds, unseen ships changed course and began descending toward Earth. The next morning came with a weak sun and heavy silence. The city was waking up above the bridge, but down below in the shadows, Ethan's world felt different. He had spent the whole night half awake, listening for strange sounds from the sky. Every rumble of a passing truck made him tense. Kyle still lay on the old blanket, breathing softly. The glowing lines on his skin had dimmed, but they were steady now, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. Ethan watched him carefully, wondering if he would ever open his eyes again. He rubbed his hands together to warm them, whispering to himself, "What did I get myself into?" Then, as if answering him, Kale moved. His eyes opened slowly, bright silver with a faint light that shimmered when he blinked. Ethan jumped a little, then smiled with relief. "You're alive," he said. "You scared me there." Kale's gaze moved around, confused but calm. "Still on Earth," he murmured. "Yeah," Ethan replied. "And lucky to be. Whatever was chasing you almost found us last night." Kyle frowned. "They will come again." Ethan felt a chill. "Who are they, Kale? What do they want from you?" For a moment, Kale didn't answer. He looked at his hands, then up toward the narrow slice of sky visible through the cracks above. Finally, he spoke in a low, broken voice. "They want what I carry? Something they cannot control." Ethan frowned. "You mean that little pod thing?" "It looked like junk to me." Kale turned his palm upward. As he did, a faint blue light appeared, forming a floating shape in the air. A small orb that spun slowly like a tiny planet. Ethan's eyes widened. The light projected a map full of stars, moving and glowing as if alive. "What the—" Ethan whispered. "This," Kale said, his voice steady now, "is the path between worlds. A key to gates that open across space. My people guard it, others seek it for war." Ethan stared in disbelief. The stars shifted, and one of them began to glow brighter than the rest. "That's your home?" he asked. Kyle nodded slowly. "Varen, far beyond your son. I was carrying the key to safety. But they followed me. I escaped through one of the smaller gates. I thought I was safe, until I crashed here." Ethan didn't know what to say. His mind spun with questions. He looked at the glowing star map hovering between them, and for a moment he forgot the cold and the hunger. He was staring at something no human had ever seen before. "You mean, you were protecting this thing?" Ethan asked. Kale nodded. "Yes, it must not fall into their hands. If they open the gates, your world will burn first." That last part made Ethan's chest tighten. "My world?" Kale looked straight at him. "Humans are strong. Too strong. The others fear your kind. They know if your people find the gates, they will not stop exploring. They will not stop fighting." Ethan blinked, trying to process the words. "You're saying they fear us?" Kale gave a faint smile. "They both fear and envy you. Humans survive where others fall. You adapt. You endure. Even now, you help me when your own people turn away from you." Ethan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No one had ever spoken about humanity like that before, especially to a man living under a bridge. Kale continued, "In my world, we study many races. But the human story, it is the most unpredictable. Some of your kind destroy, some heal. You are the balance." Ethan felt something warm rise inside him. "Balance," he repeated softly. Kale nodded, then winced in pain. His body flickered again, the glow fading for a moment. "I am weak. The crystal's power is low. I need energy." Ethan looked around. "Energy like food?" Kale shook his head. "Power. From your machines. Electricity. I can take it from your world's currents." Ethan thought for a moment. He remembered an old abandoned subway tunnel not far away. The power lines there still hummed faintly. He used to sleep there before it became too dangerous. "I know a place," he said, "but it's risky." Kale's eyes dimmed. "Everything now is risk," Ethan sighed and stood up. "Then let's take that risk." He carefully helped Kyle to his feet. The alien was taller than him but weak, leaning heavily on Ethan's shoulder. Together they moved through the shadows of the bridge, keeping low. The streets above were busy again, full of people who had no idea what was happening beneath their feet. As they reached the edge of the old subway entrance, Ethan paused and looked back. "You said they're coming again. How soon?" Kyle's eyes glowed faintly. "Soon enough that your sky will no longer be silent." Ethan looked upward, his jaw tightening. Then we better move fast. The two disappeared into the tunnel's darkness. One human and one alien. Both hunted, both carrying secrets that could decide the fate of worlds. Above them, far beyond the clouds, several ships drifted quietly in orbit. Their sensors scanned the planet below, and somewhere in their data a faint energy signature flickered. Kale's beacon. The chase had just begun. The tunnel air was damp and cold. Rusted pipes dripped water that echoed softly through the dark. Ethan's footsteps were slow and careful, each one splashing lightly against the wet ground. Beside him, Kale limped quietly, his hand pressed against the wall for balance. The faint glow under his skin gave off just enough light to guide their way. "This place," Kale whispered, his voice weak but alert. "It feels forgotten." "It is," Ethan replied. "Used to be a subway line. They shut it down years ago. Nobody comes here now." He led Kale through a narrow passage and into a large chamber where broken tracks ran in both directions. Old cables hung from the ceiling, sparking faintly with leftover electricity. The air smelled of metal and dust. "This will do," Kale said softly, lowering himself to sit against the wall. "The current here will help me recover." Ethan looked at him uncertainly. "You sure you can take power from this?" Kale nodded and extended his hand toward the nearest pipe. Thin lines of light crawled down his arm, reaching his fingertips. The air around him began to hum. Ethan stepped back as small sparks leapt between Kale's skin and the metal. The glow under his skin brightened, spreading across his body like rippling fire. For a few moments, the whole tunnel seemed alive with blue light. Then it faded slowly, leaving Kale breathing harder but steadier. He opened his eyes again, clearer now, sharper. "You look better," Ethan said quietly. Kale gave a tired smile. "Stronger. For now." Before Ethan could speak again, a faint noise echoed down the tunnel, a distant hum, mechanical and steady. Kale's expression changed instantly. "They've found us," he whispered. Ethan's heart jumped. "Already? How?" Kale's eyes flickered brighter. "They tracked the energy I used. I had no choice." Ethan glanced around, searching for a way out. The tunnel stretched into darkness both ways, but one direction led deeper underground. "This way," he said quickly. "Follow me." They began to move again, faster this time. The hum behind them grew louder. Ethan looked back and saw faint beams of light cutting through the fog. Search drones. Their sharp red eyes scanned the tunnel walls, moving like hunters sniffing for prey. "Run!" Ethan shouted. Kale tried to keep up, his steps uneven but determined. The tunnel shook slightly as one of the drones fired a pulse that exploded against the wall. Sparks and dust filled the air. Ethan ducked and grabbed Kale's arm, pulling him behind a pile of concrete blocks. The drones floated closer, scanning the debris. Kyle raised his hand and the light under his skin flared once more. A short burst of energy leapt from his palm and struck one of the machines. It cracked, spun wildly, and crashed to the ground. The others adjusted, shifting their aim. "Go," Kale shouted. Ethan didn't argue. He ran toward a broken maintenance door at the side of the tunnel. It was half buried in debris, but he forced it open with all his strength. Kale followed, and they slipped through just as another pulse hit the wall behind them. The explosion lit the tunnel in blinding red. On the other side was a smaller service corridor, narrow and full of wires. They stumbled through, coughing from the smoke. Ethan's heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst. "Those things. What are they?" he asked between breaths. Kale replied, "Hunter's machines. They seek me. They obey no mercy." Ethan stopped. "Then what happens if they find you?" Kale looked at him seriously. "They will take the key and destroy anyone near it." Ethan's jaw tightened. "So they'll kill me too?" "Yes," Kale said softly. "You should have left me." Ethan looked at him for a long moment, then shook his head. Too late for that. They reached the end of the corridor where a ladder climbed upward. Ethan pointed. "It should lead to the old station level. We can get out through there." Kyle nodded and began climbing, though his movements were slow. Ethan followed close behind, glancing down every few seconds. He could still hear the faint metallic hum below them. The hunters were not giving up. When they reached the top, Ethan pushed open the rusted hatch. Cool night air rushed in. They emerged into an abandoned subway platform, dust-covered and silent. Posters hung in tatters on the walls. Kyle looked around, his silver eyes scanning every shadow. "We cannot stay long," he said. Ethan nodded. "We need a new place to hide, somewhere they won't look." Cale hesitated, then said, "There may be one place, but we will need help." "Help?" Ethan repeated. "From who?" "I don't have anyone." Cale looked at him steadily. "Not human help. Something older. Hidden beneath your own world." Before Ethan could ask what he meant, a faint red glow appeared at the far end of the platform, another drone emerging from the tunnel below. Cale's hand lit up again. "We run," he said. Ethan grabbed his arm, and together they sprinted through the abandoned station, their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the drone fired another pulse, missing them by inches. Sparks rained from the ceiling as the lights flickered to life for the first time in years. Through the broken glass doors ahead, Ethan could see the open night and the glow of the city beyond. They burst through, escaping into the cold air just as the platform behind them exploded in light. For a brief second, Ethan turned and saw the wreckage, smoke, sparks, and a shattered drone lying in pieces. He looked at Cale, who was breathing hard but alive. The human smiled faintly. "That's 2 escapes in 2 days. Not bad for a homeless guy." Cale met his eyes. Not bad for a human. But as they vanished into the city shadows, both of them knew. The chase had only just begun. Night had fallen again. The 2 figures, one human, one alien, moved quietly through the city's forgotten edges. Broken streetlights flickered as Ethan guided Cale through narrow alleys, keeping close to the walls. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every sound made them look back. When they reached an old warehouse near the docks, Ethan stopped. "No one comes here anymore," he said, pushing open the rusty door. Inside, the air smelled of oil and dust. Faded crates were stacked in corners, and cold moonlight streamed through the broken roof. Cale stepped inside carefully. His glowing lines were dim now, almost gone. "Safe?" he asked softly. Ethan nodded. "As safe as it gets in this city." They found a spot behind some crates and sat down. For the first time in days, there was silence. Real silence. Ethan's body ached from running, but his mind was restless. He looked at Cale, who sat cross-legged with his head bowed, eyes closed as if in deep thought. Finally, Ethan broke the quiet. "You said you were carrying something important, something thereafter. What is it, really?" Cale slowly opened his eyes. They glowed faintly again, like silver fire. He reached into a small compartment on his arm, a hidden panel Ethan hadn't noticed before, and pulled out a tiny object wrapped in metallic fabric. When he unwrapped it, a soft light filled the room. It was a crystal, small as a marble but glowing with deep, living color, shades of blue and violet shifting like waves. The light danced on Kyle's face. "This," Kyle said, "is called a core seed. It holds the energy of creation itself. With it, one can heal, build, or destroy entire worlds." Ethan stared in awe. "You're telling me that little thing can do all that?" Cale nodded slowly. "In the right hands, it can restore life. In the wrong ones, it becomes a weapon of endless hunger." He looked down at the crystal, his expression full of sorrow. "My world fell because of this. They wanted power. I wanted peace. So I ran, with the seed. I never thought I would end up here." Ethan took a deep breath. "So those hunters, they're after that?" "Yes. If they find it, your world will be next." Ethan leaned back against the crate, his thoughts racing. He was just a homeless man with nothing left to lose. And yet somehow, he was holding the fate of 2 worlds in his hands. He looked at Cale again. "Why tell me this? You don't even know me." Cale's voice was quiet. "Because you helped me when you had nothing. No human has done that for me before. Trust is rare in the galaxy. And you earned it." Ethan didn't know what to say. He looked at the glowing crystal again. It pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. "So, what now? You can't keep running forever." Cale hesitated, then held out the crystal toward him. "I want you to keep it." Ethan froze. "What? No, I can't hold something like that." "You must," Cale insisted gently. If they find me, they cannot find this. The seed will be safer with you. It responds to the one who shows compassion. It chose you when you carried me from the alley. Ethan shook his head in disbelief. Chose me? I'm nobody, Kale. I don't even have a roof over my head. Kale smiled faintly. Sometimes the ones with nothing are the ones who see value in everything. You gave me life when the universe turned its back. That makes you more than nobody. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. He stared at the crystal as its glow reflected in his tired eyes. Finally, he reached out and took it carefully. The moment his fingers touched the surface, a warm pulse ran up his arm. The crystal's color shifted, soft golden light mixed with blue. What's happening? Ethan asked in surprise. Kale's eyes widened slightly. It accepted you. The seed recognizes your intent. Ethan felt the warmth spread through him. Calm, pure, and alive. For the first time in years, he didn't feel cold. But before the moment could settle, a distant boom shook the ground. Both of them looked toward the open roof. In the sky above, several dark shapes moved silently through the clouds, unmarked ships, their lights scanning the city below. Kale's voice dropped to a whisper. They are closer than I thought. Ethan clenched the crystal in his hand. Then we move again? Kale nodded. Soon. But not yet. You must learn how to use it. If they find us, that seed might be the only thing that saves us both. Ethan looked at the glowing stone again. He couldn't believe it. Him, a man who had once begged for spare change, now holding something that could decide the fate of worlds. All right, he said, determination burning in his eyes. You tell me what to do, and I'll do it. Kyle smiled softly. Then perhaps there is hope for your species after all. Outside, thunder rolled, not from clouds but from the engines of ships descending through the mist. The hunters were coming, and this time there would be no place to hide. Ethan tightened his grip on the seed. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing. He wouldn't run anymore. For the first time, the homeless man felt like a guardian. The air outside the warehouse was no longer quiet. A low rumble echoed across the empty docks, growing louder every second. Blue lights flickered through the fog as the sky split open above the city. The hunters had arrived. Ethan stood near the broken window, staring upward. Shapes moved inside the mist, sleek metal crafts, scanning beams sweeping the ground like searching eyes. He felt his heart pounding, but his grip on the glowing crystal never loosened. They've found us, he whispered. Kyle stood behind him, breathing hard. His strength had returned only slightly, but his eyes glowed brighter than before. There is no more running, he said softly. They will not stop. Ethan turned to him. Then we fight. Kyle looked surprised, almost touched by the human's words. Fight? You are brave. But they are not like your kind. They are machines of purpose. They will kill everything to get what they came for. Then they'll have to go through us, Ethan said, his voice steady. Kale studied him for a moment. You remind me of someone I once knew. A soldier of my people who believed courage could rewrite destiny. Ethan smiled faintly. Maybe he was right. Before Kale could answer, a deafening crash shook the building. The main gate exploded inward, sending dust and debris across the floor. 3 hunter drones floated in, their red sensors glowing like burning eyes. Behind them, armored figures stepped from the shadows, tall, metallic, moving with perfect coordination. Ethan ducked behind a pile of crates, pulling Kale with him. The air buzzed with energy. One of the drones fired a plasma pulse that scorched the wall inches away. Kale looked at Ethan. Give me the seed. Ethan hesitated. What? No. You said it would be safer with me. Kale's expression was calm, almost peaceful. It chose you, yes, but now it must protect you. I can use its energy to hold them off. Ethan shook his head. If you do that, it'll drain you. You're already weak. Kale smiled sadly. That is the price of kindness. I am alive because of you, Ethan. Let me return the gift. Another explosion shook the room. The hunters were getting closer, Ethan's throat tightened. There has to be another way. Cale placed a hand on his shoulder. There is always another way, but not this time. He took a deep breath and reached out. The seed, glowing in Ethan's palm, seemed to pulse as if it understood what was happening. Slowly, Ethan let it go. The moment Cale touched it, a wave of light filled the air, bright, pure, and alive. Cale stood tall, his body glowing brighter than ever before. The lines beneath his skin blazed like rivers of energy. The hunters paused, sensors flickering in confusion. Cale raised his hand, and a barrier of blue light erupted in front of them, stopping the next blast in midair. Ethan watched in awe. The warehouse shook under the power. Cale's voice echoed through the air, deeper, layered with something otherworldly. "Leave this world," he commanded. "It is not yours to take." The hunters responded with a volley of plasma fire. The energy struck the barrier and scattered like sparks, lighting up the night. Kyle winced but didn't fall. His body trembled, light flickering across every surface. Ethan wanted to help, but he could only watch. The glow from the seed was burning through Cale, too powerful for his weakened form. Yet Cale kept fighting, his hands moving in patterns Ethan couldn't understand. Each motion sent waves of energy across the floor, tearing through metal and machinery. Finally, Cale turned his head slightly toward Ethan. "Run," he said. "No," Ethan replied firmly. "Not leaving you." Cale's eyes softened. "You already saved me once. Now let me save you." Before Ethan could protest, Cale raised both hands. The entire warehouse filled with blinding light. The ground shook violently as a massive shockwave burst outward, flinging the hunters and drones back into the sky. The ships above faltered, their sensors short-circuiting. For a moment, the world was nothing but light and sound. Then silence. When Ethan opened his eyes again, he was lying outside, surrounded by smoke and broken glass. The warehouse was half destroyed. The night was still. He called out, "Cale!" No answer. He stumbled to his feet, coughing from the dust, searching through the wreckage. In the middle of the crater where the warehouse once stood, he saw it, the faint glow of the seed lying quietly among the ashes. But Cale was gone. Ethan dropped to his knees, his heart heavy. The seed's light pulsed once, warm and steady, almost like a heartbeat. He picked it up gently, tears stinging his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. The sky above was silent again. The hunters had vanished, their ships gone from the clouds. Cale's sacrifice had saved him, maybe even the whole planet. Ethan looked at the glowing seed in his hand and felt its warmth spread through him. It was peaceful, alive, almost comforting. He understood now. Cale hadn't just protected him. He had given him a purpose. Ethan stood slowly, the glow of the seed reflecting in his eyes. "You're not gone," he murmured. "Not really." And as the first light of dawn broke over the city, the homeless man who once had nothing walked away from the ruins, carrying the legacy of an alien hero and the promise of something greater. The city was waking again. Morning light spilled across the empty docks, turning the broken metal and glass into shimmering silver. Ethan stood alone among the ruins of the warehouse, his coat torn, his face covered with soot. He looked up at the sky where Cale's light had vanished hours ago. The world felt quieter now, too quiet. No hum of machines, no chasing drones, no alien ships hidden behind the clouds. Just the soft sound of waves hitting the shore and the distant noise of human life returning to normal. But Ethan knew nothing would ever be normal again. He looked down at his hands. The seed still rested there, glowing faintly, its pulse gentle and alive. Every few seconds a soft warmth spread from it, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. He whispered, "You're still here, aren't you?" The seed responded with a flicker of light as if answering him. Ethan smiled sadly. "Yeah, I thought so." He tucked it close to his chest and started walking. He didn't know where to go. He had no home, no money, nothing. But for the first time in his life, he didn't feel lost. He felt guided. Days passed. Ethan stayed hidden, sleeping in old train stations and empty buildings. Sometimes he'd catch the seed glowing brighter at night, as if it was sensing something above. One evening, while resting near the river, it began to shine more strongly than ever before. Ethan sat up, startled. "What is it?" The seed rose slightly from his hand, floating on its own. The light around it grew into a beam shooting straight into the sky. The water below rippled with energy. Ethan shielded his eyes as the beam widened, piercing through the clouds. Then, silence. The sky shifted. A shadow formed above the clouds, growing larger and brighter until it filled the horizon. A ship, massive, silver, and elegant, had emerged, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. It was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The beam from the seed faded, and the ship began to descend slowly, silently. Ethan could only stand there, frozen in disbelief. When the ship stopped above the river, a soft light formed on the ground in front of him, a circle of energy, glowing blue. From within that light, figures appeared. They were tall, graceful, and shining faintly, Kyle's kind. Their movements were calm, their eyes filled with deep, almost human sadness. One of them stepped forward. Her voice was gentle, layered with echoes. "You are the human called Ethan?" Ethan swallowed and nodded. "Yes, I am." The being tilted her head. "You helped our lost one, Kale." Ethan lowered his gaze. "He's gone. He saved me. Saved your world too, I think." The being's light shimmered softly. "We know. His signal reached us before the end. His final act awakened the seed's call. We followed it here." She looked at the glowing object in Ethan's hand. "You carry it now." Ethan nodded. "He gave it to me." The alien reached out her hand, not to take it, but to touch Ethan's chest, right over his heart. "He chose well. The seed binds itself to those who act without selfishness. You carry both his memory and his power." Ethan looked confused. "What do I do with it now?" The alien smiled faintly. "You already did. You showed what many of our kind forget. That kindness can be stronger than fear. Because of you, Kale's sacrifice will not be forgotten. Because of you, this world will be protected." The circle of light behind her grew brighter. "We came to fulfill his last wish," she said. "You have no home here. Let us give you one among the stars." Ethan blinked, speechless. "You mean, go with you?" "Yes," she said softly. "Kyle asked that we honor your courage. You will not walk the streets of this world forgotten. You will walk worlds beyond it, as the one who saved their bridge." He looked down at the seed one last time. It pulsed gently like it was waiting. He took a deep breath and smiled. "All right, Kale. Let's finish what you started." The alien stepped aside as he walked into the circle of light. The glow rose around him, wrapping him in warmth. The seed floated from his hand and settled near his heart, merging with a soft flash of gold. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt peace. No hunger, no fear, no loneliness, just light and calm. As the ship ascended into the sky, the city below grew smaller, its noise fading into silence. Ethan looked out through the ship's window, Earth glowing blue and alive below. The same world that had ignored him now looked beautiful. Beside him, the alien captain spoke softly. "From this day, you are a guardian of the seed. Kale's story and yours will be told together, of the human who gave hope to the stars." Ethan smiled faintly. "I was just a homeless man." The captain shook her head. "You were human, and that was enough." As the stars opened before him, Ethan felt Kale's presence, not gone, but waiting among the constellations. And in that endless sky, one man's kindness had become a legend.